What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. I am your host, Chris Raybon, and today we've got our NFL player projections episode for week number 10. We're going to run through our top 5 at each skill position, discuss players we're high and low on, and throw out some player props for each position as well. Here to break it down with me, one of the most accurate fantasy football rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, welcome back. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, good to be back. Just completely exhausted, but well worth it. I got to go golf with my buddies for like 3 straight days and just absolutely gorgeous weather. It was like 90 degrees though, so insanely hot. Got to watch, most of the games Sunday. Was still updating projections, but didn't get to do some of my other stuff. But yeah, had a blast, and I know you're heading off to a wedding this week too. So
Yeah.
hope you have a good time there.
Yeah, I'm pretty up against it right now, so bear with me. But I thought it was a really fun week. I thought one of the most entertaining NFL weeks.
Yeah,
probably in years, really. I mean, the CJ Stroud thing, the Josh Dobbs. It was just a really, really cool week. All those good matchups. Tyreek Hill getting fumbled sixth. Fun week. CJ Stroud pulling ahead of Laporta again now on that Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, they both might make it at this point.
Yeah, right. All right. We'll jump right into quarterback. Who you got for your top 5?
So I have Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, number 2. Then I have Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, and Justin Herbert.
Yep, I got Allen, Burrow, Jackson, Prescott, and Herbert as well. So pretty similar there. Who you high on?
I'm high on Geno Smith right now. He's my QB8 to start the week. ECR has him QB11. But he had a brutal week 9. But if you think about it, he's coming off a 2-week stretch where he had to face 2 of the top defenses in the league, in the Browns and Ravens. So should bounce back with a good game here against the Commanders. Their defense ranks 29th in DVOA against the pass. And they just had a bit of a fire sale with their defense. So it should be even easier going forward. So I think he bounces back here. Plus, I always thought, his value would probably go up later in the season once Jackson Smith-Njigba kind of breaks out, and that's been happening. So this is turning into one of the best wide receiver trios in the league. And plus, Seattle has the 4th highest team total of the week. That's always good for quarterbacks. His odds of scoring 2 or more touchdowns through the air are probably elevated this week. So I like Geno as the top 10 quarterback this week.
Yeah, I think we both kind of called it last week. It was just not the week for Geno Smith at all. Predictably, he face planted along with the rest of that Seattle team. But it's been a rough year for Geno, just fantasy wise. So hopefully he gets back to it this week in what should be a much easier matchup. He's my QB 10 to start the week. Nice. I am high on Taylor Heinicke. He's my quarterback 15. He's QB 21 in ECR. And that's basically because you're going to get some more stress to throw the football from this Arizona Cardinal team now that Kyler Murray is back. At least you would think. But either way, it's a bad defense for this Arizona Cardinal team and should have a good chance of getting Drake London back. So I think the circumstances this week for Heinicke will be a lot better than they were last week when he was facing that, Minnesota blitz, which is really tough to, I think people are still kind of sleeping on Minnesota, but it's a completely different team from last year, just in a lot of ways. So this week against Arizona, I think Heinicke has a better day and may surprise some people. So high on him.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked they were only -1 against Cardinals, but it makes sense with Kyler returning. James Conner also might be back, so that helps elevate the offense, the passing attack for the Falcons. They might have to keep throwing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, who knows with Arthur Smith these days what he's going to do.
Right.
But, I mean, he's, to start the week at least, he's popping a little bit compared to consensus. Who you low on?
I'm low on Deshaun Watson against the Ravens. ECR has him QB 19, but I am all the way down to QB 26 with only 28 starting quarterbacks this week. So that shows how low I am on him. Last week he did, he was able to take advantage of the easy matchup against the Cardinals. His shoulder appeared to be much healthier, so that's good for him long term. That was looking really scary for a second there. But this is just an absolutely brutal matchup. The Ravens defense ranks second in DVOA against the pass. The Browns have the second lowest team total of the week. So that's, going to be really tough for Watson to score multiple touchdowns here. He hasn't really flashed enough upside to really trust him against a good defense. So, I mean, he is way down there in my rankings to open the week.
Yeah, he is my QB 24. So not quite as low as you, but right there.
Yeah.
It's tough. Even in two QB league, that Ravens defense just been so good.
Yep.
I am low on Derek Carr this week. He is my QB 19. He's QB 15 in expert consensus. And for me, it's, again, facing this Minnesota pass defense, I think it's, people are kind of looking at it the same way they looked at it last year when Daniel Jones had like a perfect game against them in the playoffs, and they were just bad. But I think Brian Flores has really transformed this defense, and, they're blitzing like over half the time on passing downs. And that's just tough for opposing quarterbacks. You got to get the ball out. It's confusing. You might trick them into some turnovers and things like that. So their pass defense is up to 13th in DVOA. And Carr is also losing snaps here and there to Taysom Hill at quarterback, including in the red zone. I believe Taysom threw a touchdown last week. So Carr is not really on that streamer borderline for me. He's squarely a kind of 2 QB league super flex start for me in week 10. All right, let's see. For props, got to go with Kyler here. Okay, let's see. Your projections are probably ahead of mine this week, but...
Are we going passing yards or rushing
yards? Yeah, let's go passing yards just because, I mean, that's really where the Cardinals have been struggling, is to produce passing yards, especially without Dobbs. So I'm going to go with... Let's go the even 200.5.
Look what I wrote down.
What you...
See that? 200.5. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, wow! Wow.
Oh, man.
It's a true coin flip.
I'll go, man. The question is, how much will he run? I'll go, damn. I'll go over here, but barely. Because I think he'll scramble. He'll scramble a little bit less early on. So I'll give him like 5 extra yards, just based on my gut. But that's obviously a good line. Where do you have his rushing yards, though? I think that's also tricky to project right now.
Right around 30.
Okay, I'm around 25.
Okay.
So yeah, let's give him those 5 yards. I'm not giving him on the ground through the air there. That's the tiebreaker.
Yeah, no, that's about right. It's, he could come out throwing a lot more, but it's tough to know with this Cardinal team.
Where do you have him ranked? This puts him right on the cusp of QB 12, right?
Yep, I have him QB 13.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, QB 13. I mean, you would have to decide like him or Baker Mayfield or Russell Wilson, Josh Dobbs. So that last slot's kind of wide open. So I think we'll have to hear, how he's looking in practice, how he's, anticipating like running the ball. That'll probably dictate where he ultimately ends up. But yeah, right now I'm QB 13.
All right, let's go to running back. Who are you? Who are your top 5?
Yeah, so my top 5 is Christian McCaffrey. Welcome back. Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, and Tony Pollard. I
got McCaffrey, Taylor, Etienne, Eckler, and Josh Jacobs in the top 5. Who are you high on?
So I'm high on your boy Alexander Madison this week. He's back. Back to being the workhorse running back. Yep. It was a near even, 50-50 committee last week before Cam Akers, unfortunately tore his Achilles again. Just on a side note, that's going to be really tough for him to return next year or beyond, just because that's the second time now he's torn his Achilles. So hopefully he gets better. But, with him out, Madison's probably back to being the true workhorse back. I don't think I expect Ty Chandler to really eat into his workload nearly as much as Cam Akers. So, well, the Saints isn't necessarily a great matchup, With Madison, we're never really banking on efficiency anyway, so at least we can bank on volume again. So I think he's back in that low end RB2 status. I have him RB15 actually to open up the week. So I like him this week. I think you trust him to see 20 plus touches again. And the other back is Keaton Mitchell. I was keeping tabs on him last week in case he returned from his hamstring injury. Not a back I'm playing in fantasy. There weren't any player props, but for the Fantasy Pros contest, I just wanted to make sure I was a bit higher on him. So I was like over 20 slots higher on him versus ECR. I thought he was sneaky. And sure enough, he had a couple good runs early on, and they just kind of stuck with him. And he had that massive game. I think 9 carries for like almost 140 yards. So obviously he's going to be just very popular waiver wire ad this week. And normally I shit on those guys. Like usually they're overrated. But I think he could be sneaky because this is a backfield where he could absolutely become the workhorse back out of the blue. I don't think Gus Edwards has as strong of a hold on this as, other lead backs. And I think we saw even after Gus had 2 touchdowns, they kind of let Keaton Mitchell be the lead back after that. And then Justice Hill saw a ton of work in garbage time. So I think there's a chance Mitchell could be the lead back this week. Granted, it is a tough matchup against the Browns. So I only have Mitchell as my RB38. So he's a guy I think, we should be adding this week, kind of using him as an RB3 flex option if needed. But going forward, I think there's a chance, he could be an RB2 value or better, where he doesn't really need an injury to overtake sort of a 2-3 man backfield. So loved what I saw. I know he's going to be popular this week, but I think for good reason. So I think he's a guy we should, consider a potential RB2 back going forward.
Yeah, definitely. It's, he's very talented. I was kind of keeping tabs on him too. And that's not a good look for a guy like Justice Hill, who was the kind of de facto number 2 back. Now he got a lot of work last week in the blowout, but I think Keaton Mitchell's can easily cut into at least Hills, if not Gus Edwards. I am high on Rachaad White this week. He's my RB12. He's RB17 in consensus, and that's just because he's been a big threat in the passing game. He continues to see about 80% of the passing down snaps, running a route, over 70% of the dropbacks. And last week he saw 20 carries. He's seeing about 75% of the running back carries as well. So just a good workload for him, even though the Titans are somewhat of a tough matchup. They've started to show cracks in their run defense. It hasn't been as good as we've kind of been accustomed to. We saw the Steelers and Najee Harris have success last Thursday night. So Rachaad White, all this passing down work, I think is kind of keeping him afloat, and they can't really find any answers with that backup tandem of Edmonds and Vaughn. Those guys aren't really doing much, and every time they get on the field, they don't really look good. So I have Rachaad White as a top 12 back this week, so like him.
Yeah, right there with you. He's my RB14. I thought Chase Edmonds was going to potentially make a run for that number 2 role. They've been really trying to get somebody else involved, but hasn't worked out. So it looks like White's like more of a true workhorse back right now. So I agree. He should be like a high-end RB2 this week.
All right. Who are you low on?
I'm low on Saquon Barkley. He opens the week as my RB19. I think consensus has him like still in the top 10. But this is just the Giants season is going to go from bad to worse. It's one thing to go from Daniel Jones to Tyrod Taylor. It's a whole other thing to go from those two to Tommy DeVito and Jacob Eason and Matt Barkley, whoever the hell they decide to start. It's going to be a problem. They are just massive dogs this week against the Cowboys. They have a team total of 11.5, one of the lowest I've seen in quite some time. So, Barkley doesn't have much touchdown upside here. It's going to be easier for Dallas to just focus on slowing down Barkley early on, I bet. And then his only upside in this situation would be, maybe he'll see a bunch of targets later in the game when they're getting blown out. But why would you even risk Barkley in the game at that point? So I just think he has a really low floor this week. Nothing against him. This is just a really bad situation where he's going to be, severely impacted by it. And then the other guy is Zach Moss. Unfortunately, it looks like his time of splitting touches with Jonathan Taylor is coming to an end. last week, JT took complete control of the backfield. So we saw Moss's rush share get nearly cut in half. His routes run rate went from like 35% down to 10%. So, if this trend continues, which I think it will, he's just more of a, high upside backup now, as opposed to a guy that we can almost trust as an RB2 or an RB3. So, it's fun while it lasted, but as of now, I think we have to put Zach Moss back on our bench, but don't drop him, because if JT were ever to miss time, he could, put up RB1 numbers again.
Yeah, that Colts backfield is tough to decipher, but it looks like Taylor's back in complete control. Top 5 back for me this week. I am low on Aaron Jones this week. He is the RB 13 in consensus. I have him RB 18, and he did start to take a little bit more of the rush share and backfield snap share last week. He had 60% of the running back carries. He had 52% route participation rate to AJ Dillon's 39%. So he's getting back there, but still don't completely trust him against a Steelers defense that's top 10 in adjusted line yards allowed, and pretty solid against the run, but just a little bit above average in DVOA. And this guy Jones, he hasn't really been able to make it through many games this year, but even if he does, this is a game with a total of just 38, and the Packers are underdogs. So the game script you might not have as many running plays as you did in a 20-3 win over the Rams that were starting Brett Rippon. So we see this every year with Matt LaFleur, where the minute Aaron Jones starts doing well, he goes away from him again. So I still have him as a top 20 back, but him as an RB1, I think that's a little bit of a stretch this week. I'm projected for about 12 to 13 carries, even though he got, I think it was 20 last week.
Yeah, same. And I was going to say that they had 39 rush attempts last week, just thanks to the blowout. So, he benefited from that. He did look, closer to 100% than we've seen in a couple years now. So the health is there, but yeah, I don't know if we could bank on 24, 25 touches from him going forward. So yeah, I have him closer to like RB20. So I'm right there with you.
All right. What are we doing for the prop?
Well, let's go with Keaton Mitchell. Total rushing yards against the Browns, of course, is a tough matchup. And he still has a wide range of outcomes. I'm not saying he's an RB2 yet. He has that upside, but curious to hear where you have him to open the week. But I have his rushing prop right now at 35.5 yards.
Oh, way under.
Okay.
He's still the number 3 back for me. Like, he's still getting 15% of the carries. Yeah. Because, this is also, he did get in the game, but this was a blowout almost from the start. So you still have to kind of look at, okay, where is he in the pecking order? Like, I still think Justice Hill, Edwards will start, and Justice Hill I still think will enter the game before him. So, depending how this goes, I think you could still see him go back to kind of more of like what his season average is in terms, like, instead of that just one game. So yeah, I still have him pretty well, but definitely a guy to monitor. But I think 30. If a prop came out with 35.5, I would be slamming that under. I'll tell you that.
I don't think we'll see any props from him. And there's not really a season average for him to go back to, because he had 0 rush attempts before last week.
Well, yeah, he had like 3 games a period, and he's averaging like about 15% of the carries overall. Yeah.
Right. But and if you look at like when Justice Hill's getting his touches, it was when the game was over. It was almost like they bubble wrap Mitchell, where that could have been the time. Yeah, let him get a few more carries, but they just shut him down. So I'm being very sneaky here with this prop. I understand that, but I think 35.5 sounds about right based on my projections. But yeah, if they offer this prop, he has a wide range of outcomes. I wouldn't be shocked if he finished with 20 or 50. But okay, I got it. You're under that for now. Makes sense.
Yeah, 1 week, we've seen this so many times where guys, it's like, it's hard to trust. It's like, what will happen at the end of the day. It's just Gus Edwards is scoring 3 touchdowns. Like, that's fine. That's the only thing we can count on
for this prop.
Back.
That's totally fine. This kind of reminds me of the Jaleel McLaughlin situation from a few weeks ago. I said, look, like, he could end up being on your bench like McLaughlin is right now. he could be an RB2. It's just a wide. But in that situation, I thought, I don't think he's going to leapfrog Javonte Williams. Whereas, since J.K. Dobbins is out, I think that's why it opens it up. So, yeah, and this is a brutal matchup. So I admit this is probably a bit high, but I believe in him this week.
No, I love him as a player. I've been waiting. I remember asking Stuckey a couple weeks ago when he was first active.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard any inside info? Because Stuck is a big Ravens guy. So it's like, have you heard anything? Because I hear this guy Mitchell is going to start getting some runs.
Yeah.
So you know what everyone loves, Sean? Compliments. And compliments are guaranteed after making the leap to skincare with Caldera Lab. And I'm talking about how you look today and 20 years from now. The results are incredible in a little time. Men's skincare and Caldera Lab are the perfect pair for you to look and feel your best. Super easy to add to your morning and nightly routine. Clear skin, less wrinkles and signs of aging. Enough said. Caldera Lab Skincare. Join the other 100,000 men who trust Caldera Lab to show your best first impression this fall. Now, Caldera Lab knows the skincare world is heavily female-driven and has long been the wild, wild west for men. That's why they're making the solution simple with just 3 steps. Number 1, the Clean Slate, which is a face wash to start and end your day. Number 2, the Base Layer, which is a daily moisturizer to hydrate your skin. And number 3, the Good, which is an eye serum you can put on at night to help your skin look tighter and smoother. And just for our audience, we have an exclusive deal. You'd use code TAN at calderalab.com and get 20% off right now. That's 20% off with code TAN at calderalab.com. Make unforgettable first impressions with Caldera Lab. All right, Sean, who you got for your top 5 at wide receiver?
So I have Jamar Chase, number 1, but he's questionable this week. So it could be Stephon Diggs, number 1. And then I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and Keenan Allen.
Yeah, Chase had that hard fall. When Chris Collinsworth he's crawling out of bed tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. So, he said, don't call him or whatever.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I got Diggs, Chase, Allen, Lamb, Amon-Ra.
Oh, and Tank Dell just missed my top 5. Where is he?
Yeah, he's
wide receiver 7 right now for me.
Oh, wow. As a Tank Dell fan, I'm not that.
Yeah,
high, I respect it.
Isn't that crazy? And his ECR is like 24. I think I'm closer to where he should be, but I was shocked that he was wide receiver 7.
All right, who are you high on?
I guess it should be Tank Dell, but I'm going to go with Marquise Brown. He's my wide receiver 25, which is a bit higher than ECR, but he managed to post a 4-catch, 24-yard game last week, which in context is like extremely impressive considering how awful Clayton Tune looked last week, and it was a tough matchup against the Browns. So I'm definitely forgiving Hollywood Brown for that line, but he should get a massive boost if Kyler Murray does return this week. So I think he's, going to be a, fringe wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 option just based on his usage. If Kyler Murray can get this offense to sustain over 200 yards of passing offense. So I like Marquise Brown to bounce back this week. I'm also really high on Khalil Shakir. He's my wide receiver 44 to open the week. And I had mentioned that obviously, Dalton Kincaid was going to benefit from Dawson Knox being out. He's getting a ton of playing time, ton of targets. But it's also Shakir who benefits as well because, the Bills are just using way more 11 personnel. So he's, been averaging about a 75% routes run rate the past 2 weeks with Dawson Knox out. 3 straight games with 4 more receptions. And the Broncos, they rank dead last in DVOA against the pass. This does seem like a game where, they would just maybe lean on more shorter passes to a guy like Shakir than just bombing it to Gabe Davis, although we'll see. So I think Shakir, just based on his underlying usage, has a pretty high floor. And, he's a solid option, wide receiver 3 flex type of option in deeper leagues.
Yeah, he's finally starting to come on after he was buried on the depth chart to start the year. I think he was behind Sherfield and Deontay Hardy. But, with that need for kind of going back to 1-1 personnel, he stepped it up. All right. I am high on Tank Dell.
Oh,
he he's my. I mean, I don't have a wide receiver. What did you say? 7? He's my
7
wide
right now.
receiver
Yeah.
11. But I mean, point taken. He came back from his concussion and has run a route on 90% of the dropbacks. And yeah, last week I was high on him as well. What I say, he's like the smoothest juker in the league this side of Tyreek Hill, and he kind of proved my point because everyone talks about CJ Stroud and rightfully so, but I mean, for that drive to happen, Tank Dell has to get open a couple of times in some really tight windows in the clutch, and he did. I mean, that catch on the sideline and then the touchdown to end the game, split between 2 defenders. This guy just knows how to get open. He's on the field pretty much every snap these days, and talked about it early, like in the offseason. The first game I ever saw him play for Houston, I was like, this guy's already the best receiver on the team in terms of separation. And I think that's still true. As good a year as Nico is having, I think what we're starting to learn about CJ Stroud too is that he's just a star. He's making everyone better, right? So overall, I think Tank I would still say, is probably the best wide receiver on this team. And Nico has improved, and he's having that, what is it, year 3 breakout or whatever. But we also know, look at what Stroud has done with Noah Brown. I don't think Noah Brown ever had like a 150-yard game, even with Dak Prescott in that Cowboys offense that was putting up some numbers. Really like Tank Dell this week against the Cincinnati Bengals in a game where another game, Joe Burrow is looking a lot better. That offense looking a lot better. So another game where the Texans may have to score 30 plus to hang around in this one. So like Tank Dell, he's my wide receiver 11, and he's still kind of a fringe wide receiver 2 in expert consensus. All right, who are you low on?
I'm low on Michael Thomas. Begins the week as my wide receiver 43, and he's coming off his first catchless game of the season, and I noticed something bizarre on Saturday where all of his receiving props were off the board. They were up in the morning and they were just gone completely for the rest of the day. I don't know if they popped back up Sunday, but I thought that was fishy. I know the Saints have had an illness going through the locker room a couple weeks, so I don't know if there was inside info he was sick or and then he has a catchless game, so that was very concerning. We've seen his routes run rate drop 3 straight games. 3 of the last 5 games he's been held below a 20% target rate. So maybe he's just fading a bit. He had kind of a hot start. Rashid Shaheed's tearing it up. Chris Olave is obviously a stud. So, he could absolutely bounce back, but just flagging it and just saying, he's outside my top 40 for now. And the other guy I'm low on is Noah Brown, just because I'm getting a ton of questions about him today after you mentioned it, his massive 6-catch, 153-yard game and a touchdown. But I had mentioned a couple weeks ago that, his return was going to complicate the wide receiver room a bit. We could obviously still trust, Tank Dell and Nico Collins, but, then Robert Woods got hurt. So we didn't have to kind of project them with everybody healthy. But, we could see Robert Woods return this week, which will directly impact Noah Brown. I think he's probably going to see his routes run rate take quite a bit of a hit if Woods returns. So, well, we also can't bank on CJ Stroud throwing for 470 yards most weeks, maybe some weeks, if I'm being honest. But that was a big reason why Brown had a big game. But I think for now, we can only really trust Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz in our fantasy lineups. Whereas, I have Brown outside of my top 60. So he's a guy that, a lot of people are outing on the waiver wire, but I would just be careful with that. I don't think he's a guy we could trust quite yet. I think he would need, Dell or Collins to go down for us to really ranking him in the top 40. So I've been telling people to cool it with Noah Brown.
Are you projecting Woods back this week or no?
Yeah, I'm projecting him back. If he were out, I don't even know if Brown would be in my top 40. But I think Woods is expected to return this week, or he's trending that way.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because Brown has played well. He's played probably outplayed Woods, but last week I was really high on Brown. He's definitely, I think I was one of the only people that had him inside my top 50 even.
Same.
This week, this week I have him around 60 to start. He would be around around right inside that top 50, I think, if if Woods was out, but yeah, into the 40s, that might be a little bit of a stretch for Brown. But he's 51 to start the week, so yeah, don't have too much of a beef with it. I am low on. Who am I low on? Okay, couple of guys. First guy, Devontae Adams. He's my wide receiver 22 to start the week. He's 16 in ECR, so he is dropping, rightfully so. This Jets defense just really tough against wide receivers when you have that combination of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed on the outside. And we've seen Devontae's production really drop off these last few weeks, whether it's been Garoppolo and now, O'Connell in the lineup. So, he was happier because they got the win, but this is now it's going to be a tough matchup for O'Connell to get him the ball in this one. And if he does force feed him, I don't think it's going to end well. So just kind of a tough situation all around. The total in this game is 36. So you're expecting a low scoring game, not a ton of touchdown equity. And the Raiders have been kind of taking advantage of all the coverage Adams gets. It's really opened up Jacoby Myers' game. So we're seeing Myers get into the end zone and really give Adams a run for his money in terms of fantasy production. So low on Adams, and the other guy's Christian Watson. This guy he has trouble staying healthy throughout games and finishing games. And he just really hasn't been productive this year. So he is my wide receiver 44, and he's wide receiver 37 in consensus. If I could help it, I would not want to start him even as a number 3 wide receiver. You could see a lot of Joey Porter in that Pittsburgh game, which he's been really playing well. So I think there are better receivers that you can go to, especially with this is another one of these low scoring games. The total's just 38, I believe it is. So not a ton of touchdown equity. He's not really busting off these big plays, which I guess is somewhat predictable. It's hard to rely on those, and just nothing's really going great with this Packer offense. I mean, they're feeling good. They got the win last week, but you still put up a below average amount of points on offense. 20 points is still below the league average, just around 22. So nothing really to hang your hat on anymore with Christian Watson.
Yeah, he luckily avoided the concussion protocol, but he's dealing with back, chest injuries. He missed a handful of games with the hamstring injury, like you said. Like, even if he suits up, you can never bank on him to finish full game now, which is really frustrating. So yeah, I think he's outside my top 40 as well.
All right, let's see. For the prop, we're gonna let's go with Quentin Johnston.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna go with his receiving yardage, and we're gonna go. We got 14 on Monday night.
Yep.
He ran a route on almost. Yeah, he was on the field almost every snap, but it was a tough matchup against the Jets. Yep. So let's go 36.5. Palmer on the IR now, but you got Guyton back. So let's go. Yeah, let's go Johnson. 34. What did I say? 36.5. 36.
Give me those 2 extra yards. I wrote 30, but that's a good line. Okay. I have his projection at 36, so I'm just thinking his median's closer to 30.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not. Again, I was one of the people saying it's too soon to call him a bust, but I definitely don't think he's ready to be the number 2 receiver. I think Guyton's return could eat into that a bit. So I'll lean under here, but I would be shocked at some point if he does break out. But until we see it, it's hard to trust him.
Yeah, this could be a week where he has at least a better box score. I mean, the Jet, he was on the field, his season high routes, 95%. The Jets are just a really tough matchup, but Guyton actually may help because Guyton may run those wind sprint clear out routes that open up Johnston for more intermediate underneath stuff, just higher percentage looks to at least get the ball in his hands. Okay, tight end, who you got top 5?
Let's see. Oh baby, I got Sam Laporta number 1.
Whoa!
Oh man, that feels good to say that. We'll see if he stays there by the end of the week. But I have him number 1, and then I have who he replaced, number 2, T.J. Hawkinson. Then I have Dalton Kincaid, so 2 rookies in my top 3. George Kittle, and then Mark Andrews.
I still have Andrews number 1. Laporta number 2, Kittle number 3, Kincaid number 4, and then Hawkinson 5. Who are you high
I guess I'm high on Mike Gesicki. I'm pretty in line with like the top 15 tight ends. We had that historic streamer week of tight ends a couple weeks ago, so nothing too exciting there. But I had thought, with the Patriots wide receiver room decimated, maybe they'll get Mike Gesicki more involved, and obviously, Hunter Henry. And that's exactly what happened. Both tight ends topped an 85% routes run rate. Luckily, I was out this weekend. I probably would have bet on Gesicki's over on his receiving props. Thank God I didn't, because even though he had a season high in playing time, he only saw one target, which was a season low. Didn't even catch the target either, so had a goose egg. But it was at least encouraging to see, the underlying usage being that high. I think that could stay going forward. The wide receiver room is going to be an issue for the rest of the season, so it just would make sense to just play Henry and Gesicki over 85% of the pass attempts. So I could see him turning into, a top 20 option going forward. Obviously, nothing to get too excited about. But, he could sneak in there. Also, K. Dotton is on the rise. So he's a guy that could be, a sneaky top 15 option this week. But other than that, I'm pretty much in line with ECR on these top 20 guys.
Yeah. Gesicki's playing time definitely rose. I mean, maybe it goes back down a little if Parker is back. They seem to not want to play Keyshawn Boutte. Healthy scratching him. But, I noticed that too. His route participation jumped way up last week. I'm high on Jake Ferguson. I know you were high on him last week. That was a great call. And he continues to be on the field almost every passing snap. He has seen his route participation rate go from 84% before the bye, 88% coming out of the bye, 89% last week. Going up against the Giants shouldn't be a majorly pass-heavy game script or anything like that for Dallas, but still a good matchup for Ferguson. He's just getting so many routes that it's hard to fade him. So he is my tight end number 7 to start the week. He's tight end 9 in consensus. So not too much of a difference, but a little higher. And I think he's going to continue to have a good year. Looks like, he's kind of settling in as Dak's second favorite target after CeeDee Lamb. Gallup's been struggling, and Brandon Cooks too has been kind of absent from the offense.
Yeah, and I think that even once Peyton Hendershot returns, he should, maintain this role. I think he's earned it. Hendershot's injury, allowed him to kind of step up into this, lead tight end role, and he's done great. So I think, rest of the season should be a top 10 option.
All right, who are you low on?
I'm low on Michael Mayer, just because, his routes run rate have been a bit of a roller coaster ride. It seems like every time he's about to break out, and potentially be that top 15, tight end, Austin Hooper comes right back and sees an increase in routes run. It reminds me of, Zach Ertz and Trey McBride a few weeks ago, where they're kind of bouncing back and forth. So, Mayer's routes run rate dipped back down to 60%, not going to be startable with that sort of usage. We'll see. Maybe Aiden O'Connell will target the tight ends a bit more heavily. Jimmy G is completely ignoring them for the first several games. But, while Mayer does have, I think he still has top 15 upside. You just can't trust him yet. So he's a guy I'm still monitoring, but we'll want to see his routes run rate, continue to rise and, Hooper fade off a bit before we trust him. And that might happen. It seems like the Raiders are in evaluation mode for the second half. They're starting Aiden O'Connell, who, again, I'm still saying he's this year's Brock Purdy. We just need him to see him play a bit better. But we could see Mayer get a lot more playing time in the second half, but we just can't trust him until we actually see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new coordinator now, new coach.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got to be in wait and see mode with him. I am low on David Njoku. He is the tight end 14 in ECR. He's my tight end 16. So I'm pretty in line with most, but a couple spots lower on him, and that's just because this is a tough matchup going against the Baltimore Ravens. They're number 10 in DVOA against tight ends, and you just don't expect a ton of production from this Cleveland offense in this game. So, Njoku's had some good matchups the last few weeks, going against Seattle, Arizona, But now I think it's a little bit of a tougher matchup, and he's still, not putting up a ton of yardage in there. He's running around about 75% of the time. So it's solid underlying metrics, but nothing that jumps out. So I'd look to other options if I could, against a really tough defense this week. All right, who are we going for the prop?
All right, so I have a fun one here.
Right.
I ran my simulator 10,000 times this week and came up with a line for Sam Laporta's actual rank this week, like where he's going to finish.
Mm-hmm.
So he's my tight end one. It looks like fancy his ECR is tight end one too. Yep. But just going to show, this is kind of going to show, just because the guy is ranked first doesn't mean like he's expected to finish, as the top scoring tight end. So I have his over under at 7.5. So basically, will he finish inside the top 7? That's kind of where I have like the break even 50-50 for him on his actual rank this week.
I am going to say yes, he will.
Inside?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers, they are allowing the most schedule adjusted receiving yards per game to the tight end position, according to FTN Fantasy, 71.6. So, we saw it last night with Tyra Conklin, and Usoma should have had a touchdown. So their numbers against tight ends should have been worse, but shouts to him, saved the under for me. So, I think, it's definitely true that, just because a guy is ranked at a certain spot, there's a wide range of outcomes. But if I'm just looking up and down, I think it's going to be hard pressed to see more than 7 tight ends beating him, especially given that it's a really good matchup. So I'm going to go.
Kelsey and Goddard are on bye this week. Oh, Goddard might be out for a while, but the top tight end and another, top 10 tight end is out this week. So it's, kind of wide open near the top. But I think, top 7's where I have it at a 50-50 chance.
All right. That is going to do it for our week number 10 NFL player projections episode of the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. For more great fantasy content from Sean and myself, be sure to check out our full fantasy preview episode out right now over on the Fantasy Flex podcast channel. And if you're into betting, my weekly betting preview episode every Thursday with Stuckey is right here on this channel. Also, be sure to check out the Action Network Discord, link in the episode description. ActionNetwork.com for all of our NFL fantasy and betting content. FantasyLabs.com for our DFS tools and models. You can find Sean on X at @_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.